Hello and welcome to the Grow Patiently podcast. My name is Hugo Trace. This podcast is all about meeting great healthcare leaders, just like Jessica today, and hearing about their story and learning about what they're doing in healthcare, how they're making impactful businesses, and how they're growing them and sustaining them. So, welcome. Please do like and subscribe. It does help the podcast, so I would really appreciate it as much as it pains me to ask it at the beginning each time. And I'll pass you over to Jessica. Jessica, welcome. Introduce yourself, please.
Hello, my name is Jessica Ives. I've been in healthcare for 29 years, and I really appreciate the opportunity, Hugo, for you having me on the podcast to kind of share my experiences. And I look forward to hearing the comments and the robust interaction on your YouTube comment section. So thanks for inviting me. 29 years ago, I started in healthcare as a caregiver and moved up the ranks through nursing school into becoming a nurse practitioner, where I had multiple experiences as working in family practice, emergency medicine, and eventually landing internal medicine hospitalist. I did that for a while, and then after great consideration for going against the grain, I decided to become an entrepreneur. I got a mentor at that time and then decided to learn how to do mergers and acquisitions in the healthcare space. Since that time, 2020, I closed my first deal, and now I have roughly 19 businesses under my belt here in October of 2025. And these healthcare entities range from physician services, clinics. I have a small outpatient hospital, home health, hospice, provider attendant service, and a staffing agency. And that's kind of me in a nutshell right now before we start digging any deeper into it. But it's been an exciting ride so far, and I'm excited to share it with you.
Yeah, thank you. Welcome. You're very welcome, and I'm excited to hear more about it. Uh, it's so interesting because you've got so many different things that you've done. It's difficult to know exactly which avenue to go into, really, or to go down. But I think a nice place to start is how you were already deep in healthcare, as you already mentioned, and then you met a mentor and you started getting to M&A. I'd be interested to hear about how you saw that as a route to do or to complete whatever the vision was that you had for your life or for your entrepreneurial life, perhaps.
It's an interesting question, and I often am asked how I fell into this season of my life. But I was, like many nurse practitioners in the United States, they find themselves in a position oftentimes of being taken advantage of in a situation. They cannot operate in a large amount of states without physician oversight or collaboration, which in my experience has been the ability for physicians to take some of their money and control what the nurse practitioners are able to do. Although that's not everyone, but that's been my experience with the majority. And I fell into a situation where I had worked with an amazing physician who I felt had held me back from some things that I had shared with him that were dreams of mine, which prompted me to kind of find a way out. I became a little bit down and depressed, melancholy during that tenure. And I was driving down the road, and I remember a podcast, Dan Locke. I never forget. It was at Three Boxes, and it just kind of auto fed into his next podcast. And he was talking with his wife about his mentor, who had written a book called Your First 100 Million. And I immediately pull off the side of the road and find out, oh, this gentleman is still mentoring. And I said, oh gosh, I really want to be a part of this. It just, for me in that moment, the decision was clear, and he always will say, when decisions are clear, they're easy, right? And so the value was there, and I immediately started emailing and hounding his team, hey, I want to be a part of this mentorship. And from there, the request was I had to go to his place in Scotland and stay there for an entire week with no outside communication. And so I just, all right, I'll do it. And so he said you have to do it during Easter week. I'm Catholic, and that is the holiest week. So I had to make that sacrifice in order to go ahead. And it was just one of these things that just felt like everything that had happened in my life, all the experiences that I had had, all these different things that I had been through led me to this one point, which made sense for me. And so I went, learned how to do mergers and acquisitions, and then came home with this fire of making something happen. And it's an odd place to be when you're working for someone and you're giving everything to that job and you don't feel that appreciation, either on purpose or not on purpose. That's the way it felt. And when I had the opportunity to say, oh my gosh, I can do something for myself, build something for myself, have something that I can make a real difference in people's lives this way, the way that I want to, and that freedom, it was exhilarating and I felt alive again. And so I worked tirelessly and I cold called like a maniac and I heard a million no's and I just wouldn't give up. And I finally secured my first deal in the end of 2019. And I thought, I'm going to close this deal by the end of the year. And my mentor says, I come out here for Christmas. So I go out there for Christmas. And about 2 days before the deal craters. And I had I had quit my job. My husband had quit his job. He couldn't find employment in Houston. We had already rented a house, and then I had to run out and find another job working as a nurse practitioner, making a third of what I was making. And then I had to hurry up and find another job. So essentially, I had burned all of the ships and had no other opportunities that could compare to what I had just left. So I doubled my overhead, decreased our income. It was just crazy. And then my husband gets deployment papers too. And we had small children in the house. So there was a lot going on. But then it happened. I was able to close my first deal in 2020. And then it was a whirlwind of excitement. I remember working sometimes 18 hours a day and I wasn't exhausted. And I think it's because there was a passion there. I was excited about life. I was excited about everything. I mean, I'd never been interested in home health, right? That's not something someone goes coming out of school, oh, I want to be in home health, but it was really cool. And then we were in the midst of COVID. So I was seeing patients and sometimes it was the only person that they could speak to. So it was really rewarding. And, we were able to increase that first deal, I tripled in 6 weeks. And it was rough. In one aspect, I had to go in and clean house, but in another side of it, it was really rewarding to be able to reap the rewards of being able to say, "Oh, look what we did. Look what we were able to do. Look how many lives we're helping. Look, et cetera, et cetera." We're offering an opportunity for people to be able to age in place, and it was pretty cool. It was pretty cool.
Was it the same deal that had fallen through that you then brought back to life,
I had
or it
to
was a new one?
no, I had to find a whole nother deal. And
Oh,
actually, I had found two deals because one deal was a skilled home health that we later learned the owner had died and the wife never told Medicare. So I had to find another deal that had a skilled license that was a good license. And it just so happened in my deal flow, I had a provider attendance service that had a skilled home health license that the owner just had shut down that arm of her services. So I did two deals in one that day, and it actually turned into three deals within a 24-hour period because I'd also had this odd situation where a physical therapist had come to me and said, would you want to buy this little outpatient hospital? It's been shut down for COVID. They're selling it for like 100 million, or not 100, excuse me, 1 million. And I was like, no, I don't want that. And he said, well, just talk to the owner. He's a really nice guy. So I talked to him and he says, I'll sell it to you for 800,000. And I said, I don't want it. And he goes, well, just give me your offer because I'm having to pay the employees and I'm having to pay the rent. And I can't even open it because I don't know what to do. I said, you know, I'll give you 40 grand for it because that's what the equipment's worth, right? That's what I told him. I didn't even know. I was just trying to get him to leave me alone, right? He comes back and he says, all right, would you give me 60? I said, I'll meet you in the middle for 50. And he says, yes. I said, okay, well, let me close these other two deals. So I closed those deals that week. And then the next day signed and gave him the cash and it was a done deal. It was the craziest thing. And now that thing's thriving, it's doing great. We're able to serve the lung transplant patients of Houston, help them get better. It's really been rewarding. It's been rewarding. It's been excellent.
wow.
Crazy.
Yeah, what a story. I think one of the things that's really nice about healthcare and entrepreneurship being together is that the work that you do does have an impact.
It
And
does.
so when you're doing the long, long grind, which you've said you often don't feel, which is great, you can still look back and think, well, actually, this is having a big impact. So the work I'm putting in is helping others. I wanted to ask, because I think this would be useful for people listening, and actually for myself as well, to give a really simplified version of how mergers and acquisitions works, just generally, and especially like in healthcare and what you're doing. I think that'd be useful context.
So I can give you the step one, step two cake mix formula and hope that makes sense. And I'll try and keep it as simple as possible. You know, the first step, and this is not my own knowledge. This was kind of taught to me, so I'm sharing it in my version of it. The first step was that I had to internally fix myself, right? Because it's not this is kind of a battlefield, mergers and acquisitions. And if you don't come in fully armored up and very secure and confident in yourself, if you have any ounce of people pleaser when you're sitting across the table from a trained negotiator, you're going to be eaten alive. And so the first step is making sure that you have the self confidence in yourself to know that um, you have to stand up for what you need and want and not worry about hurting the other person's feelings. And I think, I will say this for women especially, we tend to be more people pleaser than men do on by and large. And so that's the first step. And the other step that kind of goes along with that is making sure that you're presenting yourself appropriately as a billboard of what you represent in your dress and style, and then the way you speak and carry yourself. That's very important. When you go and ask a bank for money, they want to see you in person. And it's because they want to make sure you're not representing something along the lines of what you might imagine a drug addict or someone who they don't want to loan a couple $1 million to secure a business. So that's step one. Step two, once you've got that in place, then you build a non-executive advisory board. And what that means is that you're getting a group of people that are more intelligent than you are that can offer advice to you. And the three most important people that you would have on that board are a chairman to represent and help you and protect your backside, which is very important. And I'll share a story for your viewers after this, but they have to be able to stand up to the board when you're not there. My board did try to take my company from me. And if it wasn't for my chairman, that would have been successful. So that's one. The other two members would be your board accountant and your board attorney. Those people are there to manage your accounting and legal firms to make sure and double check that everything's being done. It's not for them to do the work, although sometimes they will. And the way that you reimburse them is with what's called free founders equity. That's where you're giving them a portion of the company that right now at day one is worth zero. But after you acquire companies, they're going to be worth something. And most people that have been in the game understand that. So you're looking for people not like yourself, but that can add value to an acquisition. If you are not an expert in healthcare, you would need to add a person who understands healthcare as well. After that, what you do is you're going to go and speak to accounting firms and legal firms and ask them to do deals on what we call rolled fees. That means no fees up front. That means that they're going to help do the due diligence, meaning look at all the books, make sure that you're buying something that you're not going to end up in jail for, owing a bunch of taxes, etc. And they're going to be reviewing that information, and that can be quite a hefty price tag. So most people don't have the money up front to do that, so they're going to do rolled fees. That means that the fees are held until the deal is completed. After that, you secure those two things. You then start to hunt for deals at the same time you're speaking with banks. Now, in the United States, they have a funding program called the SBA loan, which will allow for 5% of the 10% equity injection or cash injected to be held as seller finance. You can also get, so that means if you go and find a deal for 100,000, if you ask that seller to hold back 500 or 5,000 and then you come up with 5,000, the bank will do the deal for you. Okay. The other way you can do it is with commercial financing, and commercial financing, some banks will count seller finance as 100% of the injection into the deal, meaning you can buy a company with no money. And so that's kind of how I was taught. And I structured my deals in the way that made sense for me to utilize the SBA. And I was able to do a large amount of deals. SBA right off the top of my head, I don't remember what the maximum is, but there are some banks that'll match the SBA maximum. So say if it's a 5,000 or 5 million, then other banks will say, we'll loan you up to 10 million under the SBA rules. You just have to hunt around. And then once you do that, you just negotiate with the seller, get the paperwork together with your legal firm, have your board review all the forms, and now you're in business. There you
Okay, I
go.
mean, that sounds exciting. Yeah, I can imagine sort of what that must be like when you're doing all these different things and so many different things need to be lined up. And a bit like when you said that the deal then created, it must be you're thinking, oh, but I've got all of these bits together. Oh,
And
okay. So th
moving and selling your dream home, and you have a daughter who's
yeah,
a junior in high school, and you're just sitting there like, thanks for trusting me. I'm sorry that everything just fell apart, but I can't make this fail, and so I have to do it. And I mean, it puts a fire under you. It's a lot of prayer and a lot of hard work, and it comes together.
yeah,
Crazy.
nothing gets you fired up and working than when you absolutely have to, when you've got
Correct.
your backs up against the wall. I mean, for myself, I used to be a teacher and then I left teaching, and that was a moment where I just suddenly I used to just get paid on the 15th every month. And you basically can't get fired from being a teacher. It's just that's it, unless you're terrible. Um, and then suddenly you dive in and you think, right now we've got to start making things really happen. So, okay, so once you've got the deal together, that's when, well, that's when I guess more work just begins really, because the next step is about instilling, I presume this is just me presuming, but instilling your values, instilling the way that you work, maybe clearing out some stuff that's not working in the business and trying to get it into a fantastic shape, I presume. And that must be really difficult. And I'd love to hear about how you do that, or what it is that first you have to do and then how you do it.
Everything I just explained about the acquisition and the deal itself is actually pretty easy compared to running the company. And in some cases, turning around, because I always say this, they show up to the ball in the pretty dress. And then once you lift up the skirts, you get to see what you're really getting. And that's what really happens. And I will tell you, if you're not looking at what you're getting ready to buy, they will screw you 100% of the time if they can get away with it. I have been saved by a great many deals not going through more than going through. The one that fell apart that I found out a few days before closing, I had caught wind from a nurse that was working from the home health down the street that owner planned on transferring all of those patients over to that home health after I purchased. So I would have spent a couple million on basically a shell of a company. And so, I mean, it's like just swallow the bullet. That's what I would have had to do. So you just move on and thank God for the you moving your head a little bit to the left or the right. But when you get in, now you've been looking at everything. You've looked at that all the charting, you've looked at the billing, you've looked at their marketing, you've looked at what they are in the community. You've sent people out to kind of act like they're not really with the company. I used to have a wonderful gentleman on my board. He was a marketer for Amedisys when Amedisys first started, and he was excellent. He would get out in the neighborhood and just walk around and talk to people about the home health or the whatever we were looking at to really understand the reputation it had. Google can tell you so much, but the case managers at the hospital, the physician house call groups, they're going to tell you a different story. The nurses in the field, they're going to tell you a different story. And so after all of that, I have the seller's force rank employees. If you had to get rid of an employee, they're going to go at the bottom all the way up to your most important. I want to know what tasks they do. I want to understand what's really going on there because the number one problem with most companies is either going to be leadership, the owners, or it's going to be the employees, or it's just going to be a combination of both, which I find is most often the case is a combination of both. And so I'll go in and they've never had any accountability, for example. And now here I am going, okay, you're supposed to be here at 8:30 and it's 10 o'clock and I didn't hear from you. So we're going to talk a little bit about why it's important that you're on time. And if not, you need to let us know and what the expectation is and really defining that. Or, you have these owners that have